U.S. defense officials say this is the real deal. Russia test firing its new high-speed hypersonic missile, a missile that the U.S. military currently cannot defend against. Russian President Vladimir Putin pulling no punches on his intent.
The new Avangard missile system is invincible against today's and future air and missile defense systems of the potential enemy. This is a big success and a great achievement.
If the weapons work as advertised, there is no current defense against them.
The Russian missile has captured the attention of Patrick Shanahan, the Deputy Defense Secretary, who will take over as acting Pentagon chief when Secretary James Mattis leaves next week. Shanahan warns the U.S. needs to be able to detect the fast-flying missile much further away than current radar systems can handle. The U.S. has to detect it thousands, not hundreds of miles away because of its high-speed approach. The Pentagon may spend more than $1 billion trying to develop and field its own capabilities.
We have a number of options going on with hypersonic missiles.
The Russians are making significant yet unproven claims about their missiles, saying it's capable of carrying a nuclear warhead. It flies up to 20 times faster than the speed of sound. It can adjust altitude and direction to avoid detection. Putin says it's invincible.
We're going to need a different set of sensors in order to see the hypersonic threats. Our adversaries know that.
The challenges are also political for President Trump, whose relationship with Russian President Putin has been rocky since July's Helsinki summit.
Putin feels incredibly emboldened. Putin believes this is the time to press his advantage. He's put his forces in Ukraine, in eastern Ukraine. He's, of course, taken over Crimea. He's now gaining ground in Syria. This is Russia's time, in his view.
Now, because the Russians are putting so much effort into this new missile, the U.S. is responding by funding its own effort. The Pentagon says it has no choice but to proceed.
Yeah, let's take a look at it, Ryan. It's called the Avangard missile system, and it's called a system because what we're really talking about here is a hypersonic glider that you put on top of an ICBM to launch it into space and then get it closer to your target. It flies about 20 times the speed of sound. Some estimates have it up at Mach 27, incredibly fast, can carry a nuclear warhead. And the real scary thing about this is that as it closes in on its target, it can independently zig and zag and to avoid missile defenses. The Pentagon, for their part, they are still working on hypersonic systems of our own, but it doesn't look like we're going to have a hypersonic system in development, or at least in the field, for at least 2 to 4 years from now. So the Russians are ahead of us on this. The other problem with this missile system is that our radar systems, according to the acting Secretary of Defense, Patrick Shanahan, are not strong enough, not capable enough of detecting it far enough away because of the speed. So this is a real worry, and it's got the Pentagon planners, I'm sure, working very, very hard. There's another system, an underwater system that the Russians are working on and that Putin has been bragging about. It's called the Poseidon. It is a nuclear powered, that's right, it's a torpedo with a nuclear reactor in it that can also carry nuclear warheads. It is very long range, up to about 6,000 miles. It can travel at depths of up to 3,000 feet, and it's very fast. Somewhere the estimates are between 55 and 100 knots, 55 to 100 miles an hour underwater. The idea for this weapon is to go after large ships like aircraft carriers or shore installations. And again, this is not a system for which we have adequate defenses right now. Very worrisome. This is in testing right now, not in the fleet, not as far along as the Avangard. Now look, the Russians have also been doing a lot of military buildup and increasing their capabilities throughout the whole year. Back in March, they tested a new intercontinental ballistic missile called the Satan II, which can carry up to 26 independently targeted warheads, reentry vehicles, if you will, 10 of them of a large size. In September, back in the fall, they did war games with China. Now, these war games in the East have typically been done to deter China. They've been about sort of making sure China knew not to mess with Russia. This year, they worked with China to send a message to the West and to the United States in particular. Back in October, of course, they've now using satellite imagery, we've been able to tell they've been upgrading military installations in Kaliningrad on the Baltic Sea, right on the doorstep of NATO. And then in November, they tested a satellite system called the Nesting Doll. Now, what's really interesting about this is not so much the actual satellite itself, but the little satellite that comes out that it puts into space outside of it. Now, the Russians will tell you this is about being able to work on satellites, that this little guy is meant to go fix and repair other satellites that they have in orbit, but the Pentagon is worried that what it could be is actually a targeting mechanism to go after Western satellites, either with lasers or maybe even to crash into them. So the Russians have been very busy this year. This is going to be certainly on the plate of Pentagon planners and the new Secretary of Defense, whoever that ends up being, well into 2019.
Well, a new kind of strategic weapon. Russia's deputy prime minister warning that the country's new hypersonic nuclear-capable missile renders all defenses useless. It's impossible to intercept and locate. It sounds like a movie trailer. Here now is David Sears, a retired Navy SEAL. I mean, you rattle all that off, David, and it sounds like a thing from the future that you see on the screen. I guess the question is, do we believe that Russia indeed has this, the ability to deploy this?
I don't think they have the ability to deploy it right now. So it's always questionable what Russia does have in terms of technology. They're very good at deception. That's just been part of their modus operandi for years, going way back. And they're prone to exaggeration. It's also the timing of this is a little bit suspect as, you know, we come to negotiating or pulling out of different nuclear non-proliferation treaties and things like that. So right. It's always questionable.
The difference here as we look at this graphic on the screen is a missile that would be fired goes from point A to point B, precision to take it from one spot to the other. But as you saw in that graphic there, this hypersonic missile can kind of go up and down, side to side, all over the place and get to where it eventually wants to go, in theory.
Right. That's really the big difference. So ballistic missiles, think of it like a fly ball in baseball. It goes up and it comes down with gravity. So you can calculate, given enough information, the trajectories, and then, in theory, intercept that and have your own calculations that allow you to fire another object to intercept it, whatever it is.
So this would be like a fastball mixed with the curveball, mixed with the slider, mixed with the changeup, right? Under that analogy?
Yeah, it'd be like a drone baseball. It could stop in mid-flight. It wouldn't stop mid-flight, but just completely change direction on you. Even a curveball has a trajectory to it, so this would be unpredictable. If it can maneuver, that's what we're trying to do with all these hypersonic weapons, is get them to maneuver, but at a very high speed, then the trajectory becomes unpredictable, and the problems to shoot that down get a lot more difficult.
If Russia indeed has this capability, if you were to take them at their word, could they beat the U.S. to the punch here?
They could. That's one of the issues with these hypersonic weapons, is that it decreases your decision time to a response to a nuclear strike. So the danger of miscalculation by either side starts to become magnified because it takes. So hypersonic is considered Mach 5 to up to like Mach 20, really fast. Mach 5, we're talking about 1 mile per second. Mach 20, you're talking about 4 miles per second. So you can cover a lot of ground very quickly with these things and catch somebody by surprise.
Not that it is expected that Russia would fire something like this anytime soon, but if they have the capability, does the United States at this point stand to be able to defend itself from something like this?
Not right now. I mean, we've seen our anti-ballistic missile programs, and you saw a lot of those being put under scrutiny with a year and a half ago or so, as we were looking at North Korea and the verbatim that was coming out of there, right? So we know that those are not 100% successful either. That's the ballistic missile piece, the fly ball. Now add these, we just don't have systems right now that are capable of stopping this.
Scary thing to think about. David Sears, retired Navy SEAL.
Vladimir Putin testing a new intercontinental missile, and President Donald Trump's medal. From a Moscow command center, Putin watched the hypersonic missile leave its launch tube and, according to the Russians, strike a target 3,700 miles away. declaring it invulnerable to intercept. Russia says it can be armed with a nuclear weapon and travel up to 20 times the speed of sound. Without confirming the results of today's test, the Pentagon has acknowledged that America is vulnerable.
We don't have any defense that could deny the employment of such a weapon against us.
Adding urgency to the Pentagon's own plan to develop an American version.
The hypersonics is a game-changing technology, and that's why it's so important for us to embrace it.
And how far are we from actually fielding that technology ourselves?
So I think we'll put a hypersonic system in the field before 2023.
Russia first touted their hypersonic missile in March with an animation showing warheads flying towards Florida.
Both offensively and defensively, the United States military is working very hard on hypersonics. We are in an arms race.
But for Putin, his new missile is a perfect New Year's gift for the country. Hans Nichols, NBC News, the Pentagon.
Hey, NBC News fans, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.